Welcome to the Behind the Win podcast. I'm Lauren Lane. For 50 years now, the LSI team has dedicated themselves to the science of business development. We've seen the impact of our work and how it's evolved into economic development and now social impact work. This week, Shauna and I have the opportunity to meet with Chaitali Patel, the founder and CEO of Evergood Impact, a leading corporate responsibility, ESG strategy, and social impact firm. Shai has decades of experience with military spouses and families and social impact investing. Let's dive in.
Chaitali, so happy to have you on the Behind the Win podcast. We have been talking about having you as a guest for several years now. So thank you for making time this morning to talk with us. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I really so admire your work. Before we talk about some of the things that you and I are both passionate about, I've been impressed that you have become one of the thought leaders in social impact and fintech. And I mean, you have really become a top executive in this niche market. Can you talk first about your path to achieving this status in this very unique discipline?
Oh, thank you, Sean. Yes, we've known each other for, I was thinking 8 years, I think is going on. Time just flies. I was thinking, when did we meet first? Our ties actually go way, way, way back. Now we know people that you've known for, 40 something years, and I've known for 20 something years. Like we go, because we have all these intermingling connections. So,
I think I knew Reggie before I knew you. As
way before, because you guys did business together at BAE, right? So, actually in the military, he's been at BAE Systems for 10 years now. So when he was in the military, you guys did business together. So see, like time just flies by. That ages me and ages you, but we don't look our age. So that's the good part. But I would say my journey, if I describe it, I think that when you do the right thing, sometimes, or lead with your heart or mission or passion or purpose or whatever you call it. When I was making these decisions, personal and professionals, it seemed crazy at the time. It seemed crazy to my family that I was getting ready to marry somebody in the military. But the journey itself has now shaped itself to be this because of that one big pivotal decision that I made in 2006. So prior to that, I'm actually finance professional. I went to University of North Texas, and now looking back 20 something years later, I was only one of 2 women graduating with finance degree that year from that business school. Women didn't do finance, or my minor is computer science or computer science. This is 20 years ago. So also picking those majors back then, I was just new from India. I came as a teenager. And so picking those types of very male-dominated majors and so my first job, I went to work for JP Morgan Chase in the private banking and wealth management area as a credit analyst. So I'm a trained credit analyst, financial analyst by my trade. And to have started there, and then I came to Washington, D.C. in 2005 to go work as an international banker, doing same work as a portfolio manager for HSBC Bank, which is International Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corp, International China-based bank, Hong Kong-based bank. And that's when I met my husband in Washington, D.C. as Lieutenant Colonel in Air Force. So then from that point, life as a military spouse just took different journey. And I ended up doing professional work while raising my family and following along my military husband to Hawaii. And I stayed in banking there, but I went into different parts of banking there, came back to Washington, went to work for PNC Bank family office. And then I moved to Utah. That's how we are tied into a lot of different common connections, and went to work for Zions Bank, did couple of very interesting jobs there. And then when I left, I went to work for a financial technology company that financed large equipments, like you would know, crematory machines, MRI machines, large ticket, multi-million-dollar equipments. And I ran that organization's B2B finance arm, Catalyst Solutions, financing and lending those large equipments. And we did some service business as well. And then around that time, my daughter was 5 years old, and I'd been so fast and furious moving at my professional finance career. She was growing fast, and I wanted to kind of have work that was a little more meaningful. I kind of became familiar with issues facing military families, especially spouse unemployment. I obviously became a military spouse. I didn't have to deal with unemployment because I met and married my husband at a different age and different sector, and developed a career already. So I didn't really have to face that, but I knew I wanted to do something for the community, advocacy, championing, speak on behalf of the community, military families, have people take a look at their benefit packages. I was kind of shocked that military families, and especially military spouses, had no long-term dedicated pension plans like 401ks. Service members do, but the family members don't. And I thought that was really interesting that these people also serve alongside our service members and don't have set aside benefits, especially spouses. So I wanted to do some advocacy on behalf of my community. And that's when I kind of fell into the whole social change making work. I went to work for Blue Star Families, one of the largest military family kind of a program and advocacy group. And that's when when you speak on behalf of people and when you champion things on behalf of other people who sometimes don't have their own voices, it changes you in a way where you become more impact mission minded person. And so that's when I started my journey into looking at social causes, so more broad societal global issues. And then I got into that whole field, and then using my skills and expertise as credit analyst, knowing where the risks were and knowing where opportunities and returns were. And then also learning things about how government and public sector operated through my work at Blue Star. I started thinking about what are the ways and what are the sectors where you can kind of combine. The word now is tri-sector, where you have a public private sector meet together and create something kind of hybrid. And that's like a third sector, which is the social impact is the third sector. So I got into all of that, I would say 7 years ago now. And since then, I launched my own ESG sustainability company and went to become a chief impact officer at 100 Women in Finance, to then advocate for women in finance, as me being one of the women in finance. And there is not a lot of diversity or representation of women in that industry. So I went to do that good work. And so that's my journey thus far.
It's amazing. You have got such a story. And I've told you this before. You really should write a book about your path to this, all of the things that you've achieved so far in your life. It's remarkable. So you grew up in India. Can you talk about growing up in India? What led you into this world of finance?
Yeah, so I grew up in India. My father was entrepreneur and politician. I wouldn't call him politician, but more like a politician maker. So he was one of the participants, founder, however you define them, early starter upper of the party in India, BJP, that's in power now. So the BJP folks back then were grassroots, so-called kind of nationalist rooted, very monolithical religious entity of like a political thought thinking kind of community. And so it was just that. It was not a major political party back then when he was raising all these people who are now ministers, and specifically Prime Minister is very closely aligned with my family, both my mother's and father's side of the family, and my father himself, who I wouldn't go as far as to say he may have learned things from my father, but definitely was influenced by my father's thinking. So that's the kind of a family I come from. Mother's side of the family, very hardworking, smart people. My grandfather was very prominent in both public and commercial farming space. So he sent married his daughters to successful professionals from foreign, like, folks who left India, like to US and to Europe. And so the daughters were married to successful professionals, and sons came to kind of Western countries to get educated. And so that's my mother's side of the family. And they had been here, settled here in US since, I would say, 70s, 80s. And I didn't come to US till, I would say, early, mid 90s, 94. So I didn't come to US till I was almost done with high school, if I did do much high school. Girls also, daughters to someone that was politically involved with the nationalist ideas and did different entrepreneurial things. He didn't believe in sort of educating us. He thought that we would just get married and have our own families and such. So I came to US with some education, but nothing that was tangible or usable. So I went to high school here in US, an ESL program. And then after that, I spent Mrs. Stigler's. Everyone has a teacher in their life that changes their trajectory in life. And Mrs. Stigler's changed my life. And she was my ESL teacher. And she's like, "You're smart. You should be like not going back to India to get married. You should be going to college, So she drove me up to Community College of Rhode Island, where I spent 3 years getting 4 years getting 2-year degree. Because I had to learn everything from arithmetic to everything that kids learn here in high school and middle school. I had to relearn reading, writing, you name it, everything, history, science. And then I transferred out to University of North Texas. By the time I went to University of North Texas, where my aunt was and some other family members were, so I can live with them and go to college. So by the time I got there, I had a really good handle on all things academics. So I wasn't going to, and math, because I didn't have a good handle on languages or English language by itself. I picked majors that were more numbers oriented, because numbers I understood, language I was still learning in US. So I picked finance, and finance was like a mix of art and science. I understood how businesses work. And so I majored finance, which is now I'm thinking, wow, that long ago, as a new girl from India, I majored something that's such a hard subject,
Yes.
Valuations. And there I also learned about a gentleman called Donald Trump, because we had a real estate valuation class, real estate investment class. And they brought up this gentleman in New York, like colorful guy, how he could market things and brand things. So, I tell this story how I learned about as a newcomer to US. That was my first introduction to President Donald Trump. So, then that's how I kind of got started in academia, not having much background in academia, coming from US. And then I went to work for a large bank like JP Morgan Chase. Once you're there, I learned how to, become a banker, how to dress like a banker, talk like a banker, work like a banker, also make money like a banker. So then I became a banker, and so that's that early life, kind of to sum it up.
So when you came to the US, did you speak any English? Your native language is Hindi, correct?
Gujarati.
Gujarati.
Yeah. Hindi is a national language. Gujarati is our state language.
Right.
And speaking of our state, I'll tell you, if you can pick one state that is closely aligned to Utah in India, that's my state. Topography, temperature, surroundings. We are like a high desert-ish, because we border Pakistan, Afghanistan up north. We have a coast, but there's dry coast, not like a tropical coast. So when I went to Utah, my mother said that the first, when we went to Utah, she's like, this feels like Gujarat.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you go to Gujarat, it will look no trees, it's very like Utah. So like hilly cactuses. And so you'll see, that's my state. So Utah, when I went to Utah, I felt immediate, like even just the air felt like home.
That's amazing.
So
you
beautiful.
never told me that. That is incredible.
Yeah. Go there, go to Gujarat, and you're like, Chai, you're right.
How's the skiing there?
No skiing, of course. We don't have tall, big mountains. But the desert, like, when you go to like Cedar City and when you go down,
yes.
I would say Gujarat is a nice hybrid between Utah and Arizona. So, the homes in Tucson, Like when I go to Tucson, the architecture reminds me of exactly. So I'll send you places in Gujarat and you won't know you're in Arizona, Utah, or it's like southern Utah or Gujarat. Same, it looks same. So that's, no skiing there.
So you spoke Gujarati and obviously
and some Hindi.
Hindi.
No English. English I could tell. Some English that I did know. It was like cupboard or a card, like English, like British English. But I didn't know. Actually, I have lots and lots of fun stories about how you, and even today, Reggie, as you know, thoroughly American. Even today, when you guys pronounce a lot of these things, I'm like, sometimes like I'm a little taken back. What things are called here versus what things are called there, and what things are called in UK. So yeah, I didn't come here with much. That's why I still have very heavy accent, because a lot of the family members, we talk all day in our different languages.
Yeah, amazing. So what an incredible story, as I said, and for you to go down this path and then really now focus on social impact investing, taking this concept of finance, fintech, and this work we call social impact is amazing. You founded Evergood and have been one of the leading subject matter experts in social impact investing over the last decade. So one of the things that we struggle with, even in our industry, is providing a foundation for some of the concept around social impact investing, social impact bonds. And you are so good at this. Could you describe to the layperson that's not in this industry what this looks like and this concept that you really have helped to forge over the last decade?
Start from basics, the generation one of, so you and I have had a lot of discussions about our common mission is to have economic vitality in our communities. And how do you get there is to give people purpose and meaning through some sort of work. So if you are someone who's going to work outside of your home, you have certain professions that bring you meaning and purpose. And if you're going to work inside your home, then you also have certain meaning and purpose. In order to occupy I would say the greatest proportion of economic vitality is achieved by putting everybody to work. Whatever work you decide to choose, just everybody constantly doing something. Nobody gets up in the morning and sitting idle, right? So that economic vitality. So leave the people who are working from home separate, because we're not in that business. We're in a business of occupying as many as people who choose to work outside of home with meaning and purpose. So the way you do that is to give them as much as work as they can. The work can be given to them by commercial sector, purely commercial sector, where you work a job, you get a salary. Or work can also be given to those people by some type of a hybrid setup where commercial sector gives them work, public sector provides some sort of incentives or subsidies to either parties. And so there's a hybrid nature of it. And so historically, we've done, and then the pure part of which something the public sector facilitated programs where you put people who private sector doesn't have use for into some sort of skill or training or vocational programs or education programs. So there are ways to engage people in giving them meaning and purpose, right? And in there, so that's the basic idea. And most of the bulk of the weight is pulled by commercial sector, where commercial sector does a good job. I looked at unemployment rate in Utah yesterday. Governor publishes like 2%, right? So in certain places and certain communities, commercial sector steps in and does a great job in occupying 98% of people who are looking, willing, ready to work, which is someplace like Utah, right? So, but that's not always the case in many other places where commercial sector does X, but then still room left for somebody else to step in and do Y. And I think that public sector has a big role to play in providing meaning and purpose to people. So that's something that you and I have had conversations around where my philosophies lie. My philosophies lie where public sector meets private sector and does things to continuously creating economic vitality, innovation, technology improvements. So social impact, I would say, would be generation one of that idea, where some philanthropist or some public sector capital investments would come in and work with commercial sectors in creating economic vitality for communities, right? So social impact, I would say, still generation one of that work. And we've done it for so long. And those could be our, social impact bonds that we were working together on, or public-private financing on certain innovation. There are many, many ways to putting educational training, skill-based vocational programs funded by public sector, facilitated by private sector. So there are a lot of ways we're still doing just generation one work in this space. When time and timing is right, I can talk more about what should be the real vision of our state, country, and just global society as to how do all these parties work together and provide purpose and meaning to most people throughout the world. And that's like the big vision, something you and I talked about last week around fueling, not relying on, thus far we are relying on commercial sector to do all this work and pull this heavy weight. But I think that public sector has a big, big, big scalable role to play in fueling innovation, fueling technology, and creating economic vitality, because we have to give purpose and meaning to people daily, or the societies dwindle down, right? The indicators show childbirth drops, happiness drops, suicides go up. These things are not good for any society, let alone our own country. So so that's how I kind of in a theory describe what social impact is and where that work is laid out.
The first time I was introduced to social impact investing was nearly 20 years ago. And as you know, I'm an economist, and I still think like an economist at heart. And I think that's why when you and I get together, you've got this finance mind, I've got the economic and this economist mind, and this synergy in our collaboration is really unique. I learned about this through our UK office nearly 20 years ago, where this small group in, I think, Surrey or somewhere in the UK looked at their recidivism rates, and this business invested in creating jobs for incarcerated individuals. They would come out of prison, and there was a job waiting for them on the other side. And the business invested in this with an agreement that they would share in the cost savings with the government. And it was so successful. And I thought it was so unique that, as you know, we implemented this social impact bond in Utah through this early childhood education program, where we looked at these inner city families and found that many of these children, by the time they're in the third grade, they get put in special education, which was costing the community, the state, so much money. And these kids, it wasn't that they needed to be in special education. They did not have the foundation of preschool that their counterparts had. So implementing a preschool in the inner city, we reduced the population of special education significantly. It went almost to zero. And this cost savings was shared between Goldman Sachs, as you know, and the state. And it really created a lot of interest in this social impact investing through a lot of traditional banking and foundations even. So, you and I have talked about a lot of different social impact programs that include partnerships with government, as you said, pulling in foundations, family offices, and traditional banks and financial institutions. So when you created Evergood all of those years ago and had started consulting with entities around this, we obviously were so excited about that work. And you and I have, like I said, have talked about a lot of different projects that we're excited to move forward now. So talk about some of the things that you're passionate about. I mean, you've mentioned 100 Women in Finance, which I'd like to talk about. I'd like to circle back to the Military Spouse Initiative because we have common interests there as well, and are really, I think, on the precipice of making significant generational change for military families. But why don't we start with the 100 Women in Finance and STEM and your passion towards this.
And all of the work that, if you look at my background, all of the work goes into this big idea that I shared with you last week, I believe in. I think the true meaning and purpose to people can only be provided if all hands are on deck. That's public sector, that's private sector, that's people, and then pulling out as many as people you can out of every single communities and to getting them meaning and purpose and days work, right? Days work. Does man a good or a woman a good too? So like that, like providing that meaning and purpose and ability to use their mind and bodies to create progress for societies. And that can only be done by everybody working together. So in doing that, so let's go back to military spouses, and then I'll tell you what my big idea or vision is there. I was kind of flabbergasted when I went into military as a military spouse, learning that, you know, when you work for a company, you have a 401k, you have a retirement plan, et cetera, et cetera. And I was kind of shocked and surprised that this women, somebody has to align themselves in partnerships with our noble, brave service members and create families for them, right? Like we can't just say all men can be single in the military. That's not a good society. So some of us decided to marry these nice fellers, right? And so the cost, collateral damage and collateral cost of that shouldn't be that we don't have economic parity with everybody else in the community, right? We choose to serve, we struggle, we persevere. Our husbands sometimes give ultimate, and wives give ultimate sacrifice to the country, but then the costs are just immeasurable and immense to the families, right? So I was kind of shocked and surprised. Then I started learning about issues of the military families. I started learning about economic disparities between military spouses and those who are like civilian spouses. And so I became particularly interested as a finance banker professional. I became particularly interested in military spouse unemployment and employment issues. I became particularly interested in military spouses' economic stability and sustainability. And so that's a cause still I'm very passionate about. And I was speaking to Chief of Staff for the Senator I won't name, and I'd say my big idea is that what I would love to do is I would love to set aside a pension plan for military spouses. So as long as you're married for 2 years to a service member, you qualify, and then the government deposits X amount of, you know, like we have the employer contributions or government workers have federal contributions, some sort of federal contributions set aside into military spouse pension plan. So as a finance investment professional, that's something that when I die, if I can have my name on or execute it over time, I think the military spouse pension plans, just the name of it sounds really good to me, where they don't contribute anything. And if they work, yes, they have option to contribute, but government should set aside money for a lot of these spouses and widows to have their own 401k per se, or their own IRA or something. So I would love to work on that over time and work alongside policy makers to do that. So that's that. Working at 100 Women in Finance, we were founded because there aren't any women in finance. And as you know, when the capital is moved back and forth, those are the biggest, most powerful, influential levers you pull in commercial space, where who gets money, who gets investments, who gets capital to start what companies, to form what ideas, to share what worldviews. And women just weren't at the table. So three founders, our founders, Sarah, Dana, and Carol, came together and founded 100 Women in Hedge Fund back then. Now it's 100 Women in Finance. And there were literally up 200 women there, and they met at various coffee shops back in the days with their little babies, and that's how we got started. And now we are a global association and multiple foundations, charitable foundations, 32 global locations, almost every other continent, you name it, from Asia to Australia to, of course, Europe, North America, and beyond, Africa and beyond. And so we are a community of 25 plus thousand investments, asset management professionals globally. So nice, big, powerful body of women investors. And so even in that general representation, we still don't have very many women from minority communities, underserved, underrepresented communities. So I joined 100 Women in Finance almost more than 3 years ago now, as a Chief Impact Officer to lead that mission. And the reason why I share, Sean, these big ideas with you is because that was my big idea when I met Amanda Pullinger, our CEO, years ago. I said, you know what I want to do? I want to work with minority community girls and bring them to our industry because we make money here. We become successful and they need to be exposed to that, right? That was like standing at a cocktail event in New York, God, years ago. So when they had resources and they wanted to reinvigorate their philanthropic strategy, she thought of me and said, that woman I met, that young woman I met at that cocktail, she had that idea of bringing young students into our industry from minority communities. Call her. So that's how I got contacted by her too. And then I went on as a consultant, and later within a few months became Chief Impact Officer to lead all the impact pillar while I had my consulting company. Wow. And we went into pandemic right after that. So I've been Chief Impact Officer there for almost, it will be almost 3.5 years this year, soon actually. So those are various different, but it all ties into, again, big thing is we just got to get people working, whatever work it is that they find meaningful and purposeful. We just got to put them in those seats, whether it's outside of home, inside home, doesn't matter what sector, what role they want to play in the society, but everybody has to be occupied doing meaningful things. Otherwise, we have things like depression, addiction, all the dark stuff. So that's the whole kind of big picture.
As you know, for the last 1.5 years, we have worked very closely with the Congress and the administration on this Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. It's $1.6 trillion that has been invested into all types of infrastructure projects that include tech, civil engineering, roads, bridges, and whatnot. As part of that, and why I'm so excited and passionate about what you're doing, the work must go to benefit disenfranchised communities. And so this investment in, the J in IIJA is jobs, is what can this money do to bring disenfranchised demographics and communities economic prosperity, not including the economic impact of this investment. There's at least $6 billion that is allocated just for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reality is there is a DEI requirement on every single one of these RFPs that we respond to. We've done hundreds of these proposals for these RFPs, and every one of these RFPs have a requirement for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a complete plan on reporting and how this funding will bring jobs to these disenfranchised demographics. So I think that the stars are aligning over the next 10 years as this funding is implemented and executed to take this vision that you have and pull some of this public sector funding into this concept around STEM, women in finance, and some of the other things that you're passionate about. And partnering with you and your team on this work is just we're so excited about it.
Yeah, and the organizations like STEM for Her, organization, DC, Maryland, Virginia based organization I was on a board of. Now I'm on advisory council, and I support financially through 100 Women in Finance. Like, you can see how all of the places I've been, I bring them to tie them together and kind of cross-pollinate. But that organization now pulls in young women from disenfranchised communities from DC, Maryland, Virginia, through partnerships with YMCA, YWCA, Girls and Boys Clubs, you name it, all of the other nonprofits, United Way. And they bring them in, and then we spin them out at George Mason, Georgetown, American, George Washington. These guys are running STEM-based programs for high school students. So we spin them out. And then from there, we had a success story just last year where we sent our first student off to medical school from that community, right? So how phenomenal is that we pulled in a girl from disadvantaged DC community, came to our organization, connected her with all these other organizations, put her through a number of training programs, sent her off to, I believe, University of Maryland, and off she came and sort of kind of in a way testified at our gala last year that she was headed to medical school. So that's an example of, and then I have, of course, number of stories at 100 Women in Finance, where students don't know what they're going to do, and then they come to us, they learn about our industry, and we sent off one to work for healthcare venture capital firm out of Silicon Valley. Just last year, she sent me random email when I was new in 2020 and said, I don't know what I want to do. And then from, I don't know what I want to do, I'm a college student, to going to work for healthcare venture capital firm to in Silicon Valley. It's like such a success story, right? So I think these are the ways that we have to do grassroots work with lots of organizations in those communities, and pull people out and then put them through certain programs and systems, and then send them off to the right venues and platforms like universities and teaching institutions to prepare them for a lot of these careers, right? So there is such a science and art and science and methodology to this process that can be replicated over and over and over in many other locations, disciplines, you name it. But there are now many proven models as to how to pull those people out of those communities and then make them successful, thriving, purposeful people. And now we kind of have that figured out. I believe I talked to a lot of folks in my sector, and looks like we have some of this. It may not be same pathways or same methodologies or same way we get there, but some of us have figured out a way to kind of do this work in a meaningful way, where we have now accumulated enough data around success stories where we can show that our pathways or our theories have kind of worked. So there's there are a lot of us doing this work, and many theories that are proven in getting to the end results. And I'm very kind of honored and grateful to be part of this whole change-making process, especially in academia, in professional development and academic training and those sort of fields, which I never thought as a banker I would have any expertise in. But it seems like whatever my thoughts are is working.
Absolutely. Well, can I circle back on the military spouse initiative, because that is a program that we have worked so hard over the last 20 years. And I just want to get a couple of thoughts from you on this. It's a demographic that has sort of been lost. Most of the military spouse unemployment is not reported to the Department of Labor. We estimate there's 1 million military spouses and veterans that want to work and need to work. Most of the military families are, especially if you're an NCO, need two incomes to survive. Many of the NCO families, sadly, they can't afford to serve. And as you said, there's this commitment and drive to serve our country, but a lot of them, they can't support their family, and it really is I think an issue of national security that needs to be addressed. We have been to so many bases like you have, where there are, let's say 60,000 military spouses that need to work and want to work. There are no jobs. I think one of the things that has happened with COVID and the work from home mentality is all of a sudden, a lot of these military spouses have an opportunity to work these flex hours from home and develop these long-term careers that they didn't have prior to COVID. It may be one of the few benefits that have come out of the pandemic. We have worked with the Office of the Secretary of Defense now for several years and have done a number of test cases where we are building jobs around the base, around these installations, so that these military spouses, while they are stationed at that location, have an opportunity to work for however long they're there. I mean, a lot of times it's 2 to 3 years, and then the member PCSs to another place. And so having that mentality that you're going to have a really committed employee for 2 years, that's it. And there has been a lot of great work that we've done in that area. We've also been successful in the advocacy of what we've called the Reciprocity Act, where if you are a military spouse with a certification, a license, or other credentials that you need to work, we have now created a conduit where if you're a teacher or a nurse or some other professional that requires this certification or license, it is recognized across state lines. That previously that was not the case. And so you would be transferred every 2 years, you would have to get new credentials, and that took a long time. And then you might miss the cycle, especially if you're a teacher. And it was creating a lot of challenges. So we did change that. I really think your idea of long-term benefits for the military spouse falls in that same category. And we're excited to be working with you on this initiative. But then the third element of this is the creating virtual careers. And I think linking your ideas around 100 Women in Finance, STEM for Her, and some of these other initiatives to this amazing workforce that exists that is really a matter of national security, I think it is an exciting link. Can you talk about some of the stories and your observations of these families trying to survive on the members' income and with some of the challenges that these spouses face? I just don't think it's been evangelized well in our country how desperate a lot of these families are.
I have, of course, I'm never sort of words, and I have a lot to say about a lot of these issues. But the one that comes to my mind always is that I don't know if you guys know, but I haven't looked up the most recent TANF data on military community. But to think that some of these people choose to serve their country, choose to, right? The reason why, Sean, you and I don't have to pick up weapons, and the reason why you and I are moving about free as regular civilians, it's because we have all volunteer force. You know why we have all volunteer force is because some of these people get up in the morning, whatever comes to their mind, what crazy thought came to that mind that said, you know what, pay us less. We're gonna probably give ultimate sacrifice, some of us, percentage of us, keep us poor, right? Don't compensate my spouse for doing free work. Like, who are these people? I think they're a special breed of people that we rarely make around our nation, and they should be compensated, celebrated, rewarded, cherished. I can go on and on and on. So to think that these people are reliant on food stamps and welfares and a lot of this data that you and I know are not off top of our mind today, but we've reviewed the statistics. To think that these people are on those programs, it boils my blood, makes me angry, but makes me want to look at the system and overhaul it, right? And the way, so then to go into, so those are the challenges. And I can give you my example. And I am such a rare, unique part of that community where two working people. My husband was a base commander or high up in charge of Air Force acquisitions, you name it, right? Person in charge on the base, older, wiser, financially well-to-do people. When I had to go to interview to spend a day with Scott Anderson that Friday, I believe it was February 7th, because I started February 13th, like a week later I started. I didn't know what I was going to do with because I was home, right? And my toddler was home with me. Even my husband was so resourced, ran the base, ran all kinds of things there, in charge, right? I had all the resources at my fingertips. I didn't know who I was going to get overnight to watch my child all day. It was another military spouse who happens to be my best friend now, and a chaplain at 3 hospitals in Utah said, Jai, I'll come and get Zara. Don't worry about it. Now imagine, now that's me, right? Sitting on top of the mountain. Imagine if you are any enlisted, imagine you are NCO, imagine you are a young person, right? I was older. I was 32, I think 35, I think I was. So we were like older established people, right? With resources. Imagine you are anything further from that. How do you go to interview? How do you get a job? Once you get a job, do you get enough money to even pay for your childcare? Where do you leave your child? Are you living on base, off base, right? There's so many concerns that go in place in just getting spouse to work. And then when you do get a job, the reason why my career worked out for me, because I was in a sector, an industry where my career was portable. And even if I was in a different part of banking, I would have not been able to keep up with my career. I was part of commercial banking sector, where you will always have a commercial banking brick and mortar, tall buildings, any community you go into, right? So Hawaii, Utah, boom, boom, boom. I was able to. So many stars have to align for somebody like me, a military spouse, to become who I am today. The person that I am today, change maker, you can call me advocate, you can call me strong person with a big voice who can advocate for and serve and put a mask on other people, oxygen mask on other people. We should be making many of me, not just one of me, right? So the reason why these community is so important to me and their issues are so important to me, because I feel like and I'm not alone. There are few people like me. Kathy Rock, Duque is another person. And I know many military spouses who do this, but there are just not enough of us, right? And we should be many of us doing this work, community leadership work. And we can't get them there until you get them their first job, the second job, the third, economic stability, right? And family stability. And there's a divorce rate. We know the divorce rate is high in our community because all these challenges couples face together, right? So what kind of environment does that make for their children? So ultimately, what I say is that these are some really precious people who raise their hand every morning and say, I'm going to serve despite and in spite of all these hardships. So we should just do better to take care of them and their families and their children, right? And so some of the programs that you described are, and theories that I've described, are part of solving that long-term problem. So going back to the first statement that you made about national security, we do not have national security if we do not have healthy, thriving, all volunteer military force. These two just don't go together. So then we don't have peaceful civilians can go on to do commercial work if they are uneasy and anxiety prone of their personal safety and their property security, right? So the whole piece of the whole machine works. It's because we have this small percentage, I think 1%, right? 1% of Americans who raise their hand every morning and say, I will serve. And because of this small percentage of people, rest of us can do whatever the heck rest of us want to do, right? So see how important they are, what a critical piece of puzzle they are into broader peace of mind that the rest of us enjoy. And so this is why we do, Sean, you do, and what I do, we do these things for that purpose. There's a much bigger macro kind of strategy to this in a broader national and our own safety and security as civilians.
And you're exactly right, Shai, that sadly, I mean, we work closely with the TANF group under the Department of Health and Human Services and have had a lot of success there. Many of our military families qualify for TANF funds. That's how challenging this is. And so your work with us on evangelizing this need, not just while the member is serving, but also into retirement. It is the entire cycle of these families throughout their service and into retirement that is so critical, and why I love what you're doing. So we need to talk more about that at some point. The last thing I wanted to discuss with you is these family offices. You and I have worked with a number of family offices, especially around social impact investing. And what I found is exciting about this philanthropy, especially that these family offices are looking for, is if they invest $1 million, they want to see a $10 million return on their investment. That's a very different thinking that has historically permeated a lot of these family offices. And what we're doing with especially this IIJ funding and some of the matching initiatives is exactly that, taking and working with a foundation or a family office where they invest in one of these social initiatives. It may be the military spouse employment program. It may be revitalization of urban, these blighted urban cities. Like we're working a large project in inner city Detroit, Memphis, and other places. But I've seen how powerful this is, where the investment from a family office or foundation of, let's say, $1 million can create even $1 billion in return. And with your finance mind and my economic history and DNA, I mean, talk about what you see as the future for some of these family offices.
Yeah, I'm glad you met. And so you can see, like, when I was journeying through my finance career, I'm like, I'm doing this now. I'll never be bank CEO. So some things, I tell you, I wanted to be like a commercial bank CEO and doing all this. And there's a certain path to it, right? A certain path to getting to that level. And I always felt like I missed out on my path because I did all these odd jobs, right? Going from commercial credit analysis type of a position to doing international banking to then marrying Reggie and then going into family office, and the journey kind of sort of worked out for me in a way, right? And so knowing how family offices operate, knowing how private wealth works, right? It was, and then historically they've only involved themselves with pure philanthropy where they give money, hands off, move, right? So it was really particularly very exciting for me when the new generations of young people, I would say younger Gen X and older millennials, came to scene as a second, third generation family wealth holders, and they had different hybrid ideas. So what you're seeing now in the family wealth, family office investment strategies is that this pay for success models, rather than just we're going to write you a check and forget about you, more like we're going to write you a check and we want to see how you're making impact. And that accountability and that measurement aspect of it, that's where the real rubber meets the road in terms of performance, right? And in terms of creating real impactful results in the community. So I'm very excited and I'm very kind of enthusiastic of this new approach of impact investing, where private wealth and family offices and the family wealth takes and participates in the process as another party to the mix. So you have the public sector, you have the commercial sector, you have the philanthropy too. Philanthropy has a role to play as a seed funder to a lot of this, incubating all these ideas that some may not work, and sometimes you just need unattached, unstringed money to do that. So philanthropy has a role, but then these family offices play really interesting role in creating a lot of this social impact through performance-based models that I actually believe and like. And if you put a measurement and third-party evaluators and overseers in the mix, a lot of good things can come out, and the results can be multiple X's in terms of social impact. So we can talk more about that, but I'm particularly excited of their involvement in this way in creating a lot of these things. And I think we see that a lot through Community Foundation of Utah, a lot of community foundations, Hawaii community foundations in many places. We have an amazing community foundation here in Northern Virginia. They do a lot of pay for success and pay for performance type of investing. So exciting stuff. As you can see, everybody is kind of participating in the process of creating purpose and meaning for people around them.
And I love that a lot of these organizations are thinking more root cause. It's not just we're going to invest in safety nets, basic needs anymore. We're going to invest in a bridge that will create opportunities for communities and long-term economic impact through a real bridge across a river where these communities can go back and forth. And I mean, I think that the what's happening in this world of social impact investing, which you've really pioneered, is changing so quickly, and the creativity is exciting too.
Yeah, you have been. I mean, I saw the other day that you've been at LSI for 30 years. You've been instrumental to this transformation. Your company, LSI, has been instrumental to this transformation where you can actually have, you have facilitated and implemented and kind of instrumentalized many of this hybrid, out of the box, innovative theories and structures that we talk about. You guys have been, in the forefront of facilitating a lot of this. Okay, at one point, people must have thought, like, I'm sure you're sitting in front of legislators and they're like, Sean, you're crazy. But now it's like telling you, right? Like, just we talked about social impact bond launch 4 years ago, and it's mainstream thing now.
Yes.
I think we should do that, first of all. But when we were talking about it and we were proposing the idea, like, people are like, what, you guys are going to do social impact bond launch with public money? Like, how is that possible? Well, it's happening other parts of the world and other parts of the country. So see, like, sometimes you got to be a little bit of crazy to do cool things.
Oh, when when we proposed some of these ideas, they kicked us out of their office. They thought it was crazy.
Yeah, I know. When we were doing that intergenerational party bond, we were like, what is that? And now it sounds like a really cool idea, right? So
exciting.
Now life works.
As we wrap up, I don't know when you sleep. You have more energy and you're working more initiatives than anybody I know. But what do you do for fun?
I mean, I don't, I'm a fitness fanatic, so
Yes.
I work out and I rarely eat. Like, not eating is my hobby. I think the energy comes from that, like working out and not eating. And then I'm just like I don't know, full of life. I love every part of. I feel lucky every day I get up, and I, one last thing I want to say, and it's kind of like a invite. I think people should go to some place like India and look around, especially if you've not been overseas or abroad, and if you're born and raised in America. I think you should go and look around in some place like India, where there's like so many people, so little opportunity for many, because it's a pyramid, right? So, and you come back really enthusiastic, optimistic, excited, and you will feel lucky every morning because your water will work, food's going to be in a grocery store, like things will just work, like small things that we take for granted. So when you say, what do I do for fun? I'm grateful.
I love that you said that. There is nothing that changed my life more than going to Mumbai,
Yeah.
Delhi, and Bangalore. I spent a week in the Mumbai slum, and it changed my life forever. I really thought I knew the world. I had visited and spent time in most every country in Europe and Asia, but going to India was a quarter of the world's population that lives in India, and spending time in these places, it changed my life forever. Thank you for saying that. You're exactly right.
You come
You
back
will learn
appreciating it.
more traveling in a week than you will learn in a semester at the university. And I tell my kids that, and have encouraged them to travel. It will change your thinking. It will change your life.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with you. Well, I'm so grateful for our partnerships, our ability to work together, sharing ideas, and also having a big vision of bringing about changes in our communities and bringing all these different parties together. I think that's also something that I'm grateful that I'm in your team, if so to speak. So it's really, grateful, and I feel honored to be part of your circles.
Well, I admire your work and I appreciate your friendship. Thank you for making the time to do this. I'm excited about the work that we're pursuing together, and look for new adventures with you. Thanks, Shai.
Thank you.
Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.